conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald. Well, a very tough day for the Republican Party, and more of that over the course of the next hour, but potentially a tough evening for hardline Eurosceptics like myself, because as we speak, the House of Commons is dividing. There's a vote. There's a potential rebellion against the government. What's the story? Well, the Prime Minister says that MPs will be able to scrutinise the final Brexit deal. But the amendment that is put forward by Conservative Dominic Grieve and has got full support from the Labour Party says that vote must be meaningful. Well, if these are all semantics to you, perhaps sort of help us explain what this really means. I've got Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor, on the line. Theo, please put it into English for us.
The basis of this vote tonight is that MPs want to have a say on the final deal when it comes back to the House of Commons and House of Lords. Of course, David Davis has said there will be primary legislation that actually counts, because, of course, David Davis has said previously that if MPs vote the bill down or they try and amend and change it, in effect, there isn't going to be enough time to get back to the European Commission to debate those changes that MPs have sought to include, and therefore Britain would simply leave with no deal on March the 29th, 2019. The other element to this is that as part of what's going to be debated in Parliament, a trade deal itself won't be included because, of course, there isn't going to be enough time to dot the I's and cross the T's, and so MPs want to make sure that when they do finally get a say on the vote, that it will be on the final vote, on the final trade deal itself. Now, Dominic Grieve, the former Attorney General, arch Remainer, Nigel, he's not your sort of person, has put down an amendment which would give MPs the power to scrutinise that. And in short, what Theresa May said it meant for her and the government today is it would mean condensing the trade talks into an even shorter space of time so that they have a final deal early in the summer. And then that would allow more time for MPs to debate the legislation and potentially amend the legislation when it comes to the House of Commons. And then that would allow time, of course, if they do amend the legislation, for the government to go to the European Commission, to go to Jean-Claude Juncker and say, actually, we'd like this change because this is what our MPs say. It is really squeaky bum time because the numbers are against the government, Nigel. We're looking at around 308 plays 303. And if that happens, the government loses the vote, and it's back to the drawing board for Theresa May.
It is, and I suppose in a sense it's back to the drawing board for those that want, I'd call it a clean Brexit. I guess Chuka-Ramunda would call it a hard Brexit.
Nigel, if I was in your shoes, having campaigned to leave the European Union, you want a clean Brexit, I wouldn't be so disappointed if tonight goes against the government, because it will mean the pressure is on Theresa May to secure a deal, and she may not be able to do that. There may be a real scenario where she gets to the end of July, August next year, and she simply says it can't be done, we can't get it through Parliament in time, and as things stand, because of course MPs haven't managed to change the timetable so that they control when we leave the European Union, we would leave on a hard deal, on a hard Brexit deal on March 29th, 2019. I know the way you pitched it, and you're quite right to, in your own opinion, to pitch it as this could be a bad night for Remainers. But Theresa May, when she stood up in the House of Commons, she did have a point when she said it makes a disorderly Brexit more likely, because all of a sudden she's having to condense a trade deal into nigh on 6 months, and the likelihood of securing that is going to be very difficult, and that could make World Trade Organization rules, the clean Brexit that you've campaigned for, a little bit more likely.
This was the Peter Bone line, that actually we may just crash out of the whole thing. There isn't much Parliament can do about it. You may be right, Theo, although that would be very much against the instincts of this government, wouldn't it?
Yes, I wouldn't want to try and predict, but it does. You know, the European Council are debating it tomorrow. Theresa May's here. I'm just on my way to Brussels now. I'm in touch to the Eurostar. She's in Brussels tomorrow. They then kick her out to have a debate amongst themselves. And it doesn't look good. I'm sure Jean-Claude Juncker will be having a slight smirk into his casino tonight if Theresa May loses this vote. It's not exactly a position of strength, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. Theo, have a good trip, and I thank you. And, of course, that's the problem that we face potentially with the British Parliament. And, of course, what everyone forgets is if there is a deal of some kind, ultimately, the European Parliament, of course, gets to vote on it after the British Parliament. And certainly with the resolution that was voted on today, they're in no mood to be particularly nice to the Brits at this moment in time. So, is it right, folks? Is it right that MPs should have a vote, a decisive vote, on whatever the final Brexit deal is? The argument here is about sovereignty. And those who say that MPs must have the final say on a deal are those that will argue that sovereignty of our country rests in Parliament. Those who take the opposing view, of whom I'm one, say no, sovereignty rests with the people. The parliamentarians are people we put there for short periods of time to act on our behalf. That, I think, is the crux of this whole debate. People like me will say, hang on, we've had our say. The government's job is to do its best. It's not for Parliament to stop it. What do you think? Is it right for MPs to have a say on whatever the final deal is? Call me, let me know your views. 0345 6060 973. If you think, no, actually I'm really worried about this, because all that will happen is MPs will try to overturn the will of the people, then text to 84850. Or perhaps you think, you know what, we've had our say already, this is really ridiculous, then you can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. You can watch me on Facebook. I'm live here in the European Parliament. I'm going to ask my first caller tonight, is Aidan, who's calling from Tottenham and is a new caller to the show. Aidan, how do you feel about this vote tonight?
Hello, Nigel. I don't think the vote tonight matters. It's more of an internal thing, I think, in Parliament. I don't have much respect for a lot of the way the MPs behave. I was too young to vote in 1975 when Harold Wilson had a vote to remain in the European Union, and they voted to stay, and that was it. It was and we had to lump it. We then found out Ted Heath had misled everyone, and the ever-close union was always written into it. So we've suffered. Yeah. I didn't vote in the election last year, or in fact the general election this year, or the referendum vote last year either. I'm not on the electoral roll for other reasons. Nothing to do with criminality, but to do with protection of my family. So I have a view in that the default position is that we are leaving European Union the day before my 60th birthday on the 29th of March 2018. So I will celebrate...
18 or 19? 19.
2019, I apologise, in a year's time, a year and a bit's time. Yeah. So it could be the day before my 60th birthday, so I'm 58. So,
okay.
The default position is we have had a referendum that Parliament set up to leave the European Union. That should be the default position. We never had a referendum about whether there should be a deal or not. I'm very happy for the government to go and get a deal and to do whatever they want to do. And if Parliament wants to vote on that and then decide to go with that, and that's an open vote, I'm happy for that to happen, but once we've left. I think because we've been sold down the river a little bit, and I understand the pressures Theresa May's on and the mistakes she's made, she's trying to do the best thing for the country, although not in my view the way it's going. I think we ought to just leave the European Union, go back to them and say, right, we're happy to do a trade deal with you. They're going to be put under pressure by the Germans and the French and all the rest of them. Half of London is flooded by lots of Spanish and Italian people in my business that can't get jobs in those countries. There is no focus in the media here on how badly we all know about Greece, but there's nothing said about these other countries. It's all about how...
Well, we may well see, Aidan, the Italian elections that will take place in March, how the Italians are currently feeling. Aidan, let me ask you very quickly, do you get the sense that our political class would like to water down, delay, or even stop the Brexit vote of the people?
Well, that's why a lot of them are behaving the way they are. Labour are doing the right thing from their perspective in not saying anything and letting everything go wrong around them. But the British people voted to leave, so that's it, we leave. The vote...
Well, let's hope so, Aidan. Let's hope so. I thank you for your call. Nigel, how can it be fair for anti-Brexit MPs to vote against the people, says David. Well, that's pretty much how I feel about it, but, you know, they've been wanting to vote against the people for a very, very long time. I'm going to go to Glenn in Milton Keynes. Good evening, Glenn.
Hello, mate. How are you doing? All right?
I'm all right. I'm just frustrated, Glenn. I'm angry. I'm annoyed. You know, I haven't got great confidence in this government, but I've even got less confidence in our political class in Westminster. I think they are our servants, Glenn, not the other way round.
Well, Nigel, I mean, I was one of the 17.5 million people that voted out, but This isn't the Brexit I wanted. Do you think it's time, now everybody knows how Brussels are bully boys, and the amount of things they want off us and we can't, is it have another referendum and put it to the people? We've got 8 years to go with them. We've got 3 million people, so they say. I reckon it's double that they can allow their families to come in and say, is this what you really want? Because that wasn't what I voted for. Our fishermen and all that are on their knees. You know, the building trade, the British builders are on their knees. This isn't what I voted for, Nigel. Do you think it's time for another referendum and say...
Well, OK, Glenn, what would the second referendum be? Would it be a rerun of the first one?
No, we'll just say that we're leaving Brexit, and we don't. You know yourself. All the lawyers have said we don't have to pay them a penny. We do not have to pay them a penny. Why are we snuggling up to them and saying we want to be in your club? I mean, you know, what's your club for 40 years that only 4 people out of 28 pay the bar bill? I mean,
so you think, Glenn, you think then that we may actually need a second referendum to really sort this out? Yeah.
Well, if it's going the way that I see it, you know, we're going to be in Europe for another 8 years.
Glenn, I've got to leave you, Glenn. We're going to the House of Commons to get the result of this vote.
Order! I think we all want to hear the result. Let's make sure the result is correct.
The ayes to the right, 309. The noes to the left, 305.
OK, so that was the vote on the amendment. Theo Usherwood, how do you read that?
Yes, Nigel. So it's cracking on the line.
Yeah, can you hear me? Right, we've got some problems there. So the amendment has passed by 309 votes to 305. Have you ever heard Parliament happier? Have you ever heard louder cheering in all your life? I haven't, because they think they've really struck a blow back tonight, not just against the government, but against the Brexit vote, which so many of them completely and utterly despise. So they have voted for Parliament to have an absolute say on whatever final deal Theresa May gets. The one possibility that Brexiteers might keep up their sleeve is that if there's no deal, we might just crash out. But I don't see our Prime Minister ever settling for that. So, yeah, you know, good day for Vince Cable, good day for Keir Starmer, good day for Ken Clarke and Dominic Grieve and Anna Soubry, but is it a good day for all of us? That really is the question. More analysis on this in a moment. For now, you're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC. I'm live from Strasbourg, and it's 7:17. So the breaking news is the government has suffered its first defeat over the European Union withdrawal bill after MPs supported a Tory rebel amendment for a meaningful vote on any Brexit deal, and the result was 309 votes to 305, a majority of 4 in favour of the rebel amendment. My reaction to it is simply that my contempt for career politicians knows no bounds. They are utterly determined, hundreds of them, to do what they can to overturn the Brexit result. It's just as simple as that. I get on text, Nigel, when I ask myself why MPs have done this, I suddenly remember David Lammy. We can stop this madness. That answers any questions. And in many ways, it does. I wonder what Joseph in Sheffield makes of all of this. Good evening, Joseph.
Good evening, Nigel. I'm absolutely fuming right now. I'm going mad right now. This
right, so am I.
Group of treacherous. These are a group of undemocratic people trying to subvert the election, the referendum that happened last year, and I think they should be ashamed of themselves, really.
Actually, Joseph, they're proud of themselves because they think people like you, Joseph, are pig ignorant and stupid. And how dare you vote against this political construction we've been part of for over 40 years. And they believe, Joseph, and they do believe that they know better than you what is good for our country.
Yes, I would just say this to them. This has been missed out of the news. There's one guy in the parliament that said, Philip Davis, that if they should pass this vote through tonight, there will be a huge public backlash, the likes of which they've never seen before, and they should be ready for the consequences. And I say everybody to take note of what Mr. Philip Davis, who's representing somewhere in Yorkshire, Bradford, somewhere there.
Shipley, yes, that's right. Yeah. No, well, Joseph, you know, I think he's right. And I've been saying for some time, don't underestimate the Brexit backlash. Don't underestimate the passion of people that voted against what all the mainstream parties said, what all the global leaders said, what many very important, not all, but many important elements of the media said. Joseph, I'm with you. There will be a backlash at some point. Joseph in Sheffield is fuming. Simon in Basingstoke, how do you feel?
I think I'm beyond fuming, but I think that not only has Theresa May betrayed the British people, I also think she's betrayed her own party by allowing this to go ahead. How many of those 17.4 million voters are Tory voters? I will not vote for a Theresa May-led government, and I'm very doubtful whether I'll ever vote for a Tory government.
Do you know, Simon, you're saying this. If you're a regular listener to this show, you will know that I've now been arguing for nearly 3 months that the longer Theresa May stays as Tory party leader and Prime Minister, without her heart really in Brexit, the closer we get to a hardline socialist government with Corbyn and McDonnell. Because, Simon, I think there are millions of people like you out there who would be inclined to vote Conservative but won't if she's in charge.
I think that's absolutely true. And I think that not only is what she's doing morally wrong, but I also think it's politically stupid. If she'd have said, we've tried to negotiate with the EU in good faith, they've demanded money effectively with menaces, and this is Great Britain, we don't respond to that, and had a hard Brexit, the Tories would have walked the next election, because even Remainers object to the way that the EU has behaved.
Do you know, Simon, I met this morning here in Strasbourg a Tory MEP, had a coach load of visitors, and there were some from Kent, some from Hampshire, but from southern England, and I was chatting with them. And I made the point to them. I said, if Mrs May really stuck to her guns, showed people she believed in Brexit, even if the government fell, she could win the next election by actually getting a lot of Labour leavers to vote for her if she showed that conviction. But it's just not going to happen, Simon, is it?
It's not. And I think, again, this shows the tremendous lack of judgment that Theresa May has. And those that are advising her. But above all, this is putting at peril the whole idea of representative democracy. That only works, Nigel, if your representatives represent your views.
Well, trust, Simon. Trust the word, isn't it? Trust is the word. I know people, I've met people who said to me, I've never voted in my life, but I went out to vote in that referendum because I thought I could make a difference. And people voted on both sides, believing this was something that really, really mattered. And if now, cynically, our career politicians do everything they can to overturn it, and goodness me, they've taken a step down that road tonight, then I think the result for Trust is seriously bad news. Simon, I thank you. So Simon is beyond fuming. David says, I'm so angry at this result. Theresa May should resign. Let's have another election. Well, David, you're angry because you're a Brexiteer, predominantly, I'm sure. If we do have another election, right now, I would not discount Corbyn being the biggest party and being able to lead a coalition government that would do their utmost, if you believe what Keir Starmer says, to keep us in the single market and the customs union in perpetuity. So I could say to you, David, be careful what you wish for. Richard is calling me next from Whetstone. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I'm well. So
delighted.
So you're delighted. You think Parliament's done the right thing, yeah?
I do, because for two reasons, really. I think the Leave campaign missold Brexit to the British people. And
oh, really?
We don't need to go into reasons. Yeah. But there's no point pointing who's done what and etc. But
so you don't think, Richard, just very quickly, you don't think that the Yes side missold in 1975 the common market, no?
I just think that if everyone knew that £350 million a week was not going to the NHS, that you guys might not have won the referendum. And
had they said, no, go on, move on.
Okay. And the second point is, but more importantly than being missold to, if or if not true, is the reality of Brexit. And the fact is, the EU are calling the shots. I remember watching you saying they need us. Well, the reality is, yeah, they do need us, but we need them more. And as people see the reality of what's happening, we're not being able to negotiate properly or well, and then we have inflation at 3.1% because our currency's gone down, etc., all as a result of Brexit. It's the only shot we have for our representatives in Parliament to fight for the Brexit that we need, which is a soft Brexit. We need a soft Brexit. If not, no Brexit.
Well, Richard, the sterling point, I mean, sterling fell far more between 2010 and the referendum than it's fallen since. So that's a slightly separate issue. But if Brexit, all right, if Brexit means effectively staying in the single market, if Brexit means regulatory alignment with the rest of the European Union, if Brexit means the European Court of Justice having some say over citizens' rights, EU citizens' rights, for the next 8 years. And these are basically all the things that were agreed last Friday morning. Is it actually Brexit?
Essentially not. It's remaining, if you like.
Right.
And so yeah.
So, Richard, would you accept that when people use the term soft Brexit, and by the way, that term, hard and soft Brexit, were never used in the referendum at all, that when people use the term soft Brexit, effectively what they mean is staying in the European Union, though not in name?
Yes, Nigel, I think along just how you described in those words, yes. And I think we have MPs for a reason. There shouldn't have been a referendum. But fine.
Oh, no. Richard, I'm amazed they even give us elections, frankly. But look, thank you. And I think Richard there has just perfectly described, honestly and openly, what soft Brexit means. Soft Brexit means staying in virtually every single part of the European Union. We'll just leave the treaty. They'll say we've left, but in reality, we won't have done. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, live from Strasbourg. It's 7:30 and... So the government has suffered its first defeat over the European Union withdrawal bill after MPs backed a Tory rebel amendment for a meaningful vote at the end of any process that delivers a Brexit deal. The result was 309 votes to 305, a majority of 4, and I don't think I've heard louder cheering in the House of Commons since we won the Falklands War. That's how happy many of our MPs were. Now, last night, you may have been a little bit surprised that I put emphasis on this show towards a special election, their form of a by-election, that took place in Alabama. I did so because I knew that it was a very big, important vote, and I was pretty unsure as to which way it would go. Remember, Alabama had been a Republican state for the last 25 years, but the Republican candidate, Roy Moore, was bedeviled with scandal, much of it going back 40 years, but a series of allegations that he behaved inappropriately with under age girls. And last night, we had with us on the show Wade Smith. He's the morning show host on News Talk 570 in Gadsden, Alabama, which is Moore's hometown. Wade, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
No, well, I tell you why we're having you back. Not just because you're there in Gadsden, but you said something last night that was really, really interesting. You said that you yourself were a Republican voter, and yet you couldn't bring yourself to vote for Roy Moore, and you talked about the fact that the turnout was higher than people thought it was going to be, which you thought would play in the Democrats' favour. So, Wade Smith, you called it.
I really did, and it was almost spot on when we looked at it after the fact. I said that if this was going to be Roy Moore's race, he needed turnout to be anywhere between 18 and 25%, which is what the Secretary of State for Alabama, John Merrill, said would be the turnout, and turnout was 40%. And with a number that large, it just went through the roof for Doug Jones. He was able to win the race by about 21,000 votes. And where everyone is focusing their attention, the number of write-in votes in this election was 23,000 votes. That could have put Roy Moore over the top, but this seems to be the crowd, like myself, who wrote in another candidate instead of voting for Republican Roy Moore.
Yeah. No, well, Wade, as I say, you just felt you couldn't bring yourself to vote for Moore. And I guess, in a funny way, whilst this is a serious blow to the Republicans, a serious blow to Donald Trump, in some ways, they might have saved themselves a heap of trouble, though, mightn't they?
They absolutely did, because they're going to have Doug Jones, who is the Democrat now sitting in the seat, for another 2 years until the next regular election, until the cycle runs out on this seat. This was Jeff Sessions' seat before he was appointed to the Attorney Generalship. And I do believe, with no Roy Moore in Washington, D.C., they're going to do better in these midterm elections. And it's going to be better for the state of Alabama because they're going to get a full-term Republican into that seat in 2020.
Yeah, so it'll return to normal in 2020. And I think had Moore gone to Capitol Hill, there would have been endless inquiries, would there not, into whether he had or had not behaved inappropriately with a series of young women 40 years ago.
There absolutely would have been. The ethics commissions would have been called on Roy Moore, and we would not have heard the end of this until he was probably removed from office. And then at that point, there would just have to have been an appointment, which it would have kept a Republican in the seat, but it would have made the Republican Party look worse, especially going on during the 2018 midterms and into the 2020 election, where Donald Trump is going to be up for re-election again.
So in a sense, Wade Smith, as a Republican supporter, you're almost, I sense, slightly relieved that Democrat Doug Jones won last night.
I'm very relieved, and that's from the sense that I didn't think Roy Moore was somebody that, as a resident of Alabama, as someone that was born here and grew up here, I didn't think he was somebody that needed to be in the seat. But in long-term thinking, as a Republican, as a conservative who wants to see this party be successful down the road, I think it was the best thing for the future of the party and not something that's going to derail any of the agenda down the road.
Terrific. Well, Wade Smith, all I can say is thank you, not just for joining us last night and tonight, or at least tonight our time, but for getting it absolutely dead on with your call. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you did hear that last night from Wade Smith, and boy, did he get that right. Whether you race down to the bookmakers having listened to him or not, I don't know. What I do know is that there are a lot of very happy MPs in Parliament right at the moment because they've inflicted a defeat on the government. And it is a very real defeat on the government because there is now going to be a meaningful vote at the end of any Brexit process that produces a deal. Still the possibility that if there was no deal and we crashed out, that Parliament couldn't stop it. But I have to say, I don't, for everything I've ever seen in my life, think that Theresa May is the kind of Prime Minister that would accept no deal. I think she'd come crawling on her knees to Brussels for a deal of some kind. I'm going to Dorset to Peter, a new caller to this show. Good evening, Peter.
Good evening, Nigel. It's a privilege.
So, are you happy? Are you enraged? How do you feel?
Well, let me first say I'm a very active Brexiteer. I led the Vote Leave campaign for the West Dorset constituency last year.
Righty-ho. Yeah.
So I'm fully on the side with you. But on this vote, I don't think I'd be too gloomy if I were you. And I'll tell you why. I don't trust Theresa May an inch. And I imagine you don't either.
Not really, no.
She's been giving a lot away. Alignment of regulations, 8 years of the Court of Justice, 40 or 50 billion pounds.
Yep.
And there could be more to come. She could carry on giving more away when she gets to talk about transitional arrangements and trade and all the rest of it. This vote could stop her. If the deal doesn't have to come back to Parliament for approval, she could do what on earth she liked, and there'd be nothing anybody could do about it.
Well, the vote today in the House of Commons, Peter, but the vote tonight, Peter, in the House of Commons, is that the deal has to not just go back to Parliament, but that they can actually veto it. That's right. But supposing the deal that she negotiates with Brussels is a terribly bad deal from the Brexiteers' point of view, Parliament would veto that too. So it's a double-edged sword, I think, this one. I heard the cheers in the House of Commons. Yeah, amazing, wasn't it? Quite amazing. And I think the cheers from the Remainers might rebound on them in due course, because they might find that this vote can be used against them. Well, you may be right, Peter, but I would just say this to you, that what I've noticed since the referendum are two shifts that are going on. The first is a shift in public opinion. And now, fewer than 1 in 5 voters wants to undo Brexit. There is now a clear, solid majority that say, look, we voted for this, let's just jolly well get on with it. That's the people. But the other shift has been amongst our political classes, and they now feel, I think, emboldened. They now genuinely believe that they can get us what is called a soft Brexit. And I don't know whether you heard, Peter, the caller, before we went to the news at 7:30, saying, yeah, actually, what soft Brexit means is effectively we stay in. That, Peter, I think, is the problem. And I wonder what we're going to have to do. You were involved with the referendum campaign, that great historic victory. What are we going to have to do to take him on again? What are we going to have to do? Yeah. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance, Nigel. So keep on fighting, yeah? Certainly vigilant. Well, I know, I've had a quarter of a century of it, and I guess what sort of gets me down a bit today, and I did say this in the session in Strasbourg this morning, is I do feel there may be a battle. We may have to refight quite a lot of this all over again. Peter in Dorset, thank you. And Peter thinks, well, actually, may not be that bad. It could go back the other way. On Twitter, I get, this is a victory for sovereignty against a rudderless, weak government. Nigel, a majority of 4 is too close to count. They should be made to vote again, says Kenny. Understand that Brexit will be aborted. The trajectory is changing. Well, the trajectory amongst our political class may well be changing. I'm absolutely convinced the trajectory amongst ordinary voting public has actually, in fact, gone the other way. But that's where we are. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, live from Strasbourg, and it's 7:45. We understand there were 12 rebels in Parliament tonight that voted against their own government and voted for Parliament to have a meaningful final say on whatever deal the government negotiates. And we understand one of those was Stephen Hammond, and he's just been sacked as a vice-chairman of the Conservative Party, according to Sam Coates of The Times. The Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, has responded by saying this defeat is a humiliating loss of authority for the government on the eve of the European Council meeting. That happens tomorrow night and into Friday. Labour has made the case since the referendum for a meaningful vote in Parliament on the terms of Britain's withdrawal from the European Union. Well, I don't know. Not always easy to work out exactly where Labour has been standing on this. And the names of the rebels, the heroes or the villains, according to your point of view, are Grieve, Clark, Morgan, Stevenson, Neil, S. Hammond, Heald, Soubry, Wollaston, Giannoli, Sandbach and Allen. So they are the 12 Tories who voted against their own government on this. Looks like one of them has been sacked as a vice chairman of the party. That looks like good information. I wonder where we go from here. Joseph in Newcastle is a new caller to the show. Good evening, Joseph.
Hi, Nigel.
Good. So how do you feel? I mean, are you elated or fuming?
Elated, because I heard your Brexiteers friends on before. I just thought it's wrong. We voted to leave the EU to get parliamentary democracy back to the Parliament.
No, we voted to get our country back.
Yes, but we also voted to get democracy back to our Parliament, stop taking the EU rules. So
right,
and the MP should have a vote on the final deal. Anyway, I don't trust David Davis or what. I just don't trust him, and I don't think the MP either.
All right. I mean, listen, I do take your point that this vote was the referendum was very much about sovereignty, but it is a little bit about your definition of sovereignty, isn't it? You know, are the MPs our bosses, or are they our servants?
But they are elected to look out for the best interests of us. So if Theresa May comes back and the deal's rubbish, and they vote for it, that's going to screw Britain. So if they hold the government to account, it's going to be better for us and it's going to be a better deal.
So what happens if Theresa May? What happens if Theresa May's deal is rejected by Parliament? Where on earth do we go then, Joseph? Difficult, isn't it? Lost him. He's gone. He's had enough. Peter in Wimbledon, what do you think this evening?
Well, Nigel, you're probably not going to like... good evening, first of all. You're not going to like what I'm going to say, but the main reason this country is in such a mess is because millions of British people were fooled by crooks and conmen politicians like yourself. And
I couldn't agree more, Peter. Back in 1975, the lies they told about the common market were unforgivable. They should have gone to the tower, most of them.
You can go back as far as you want in history, but we're talking about where we are now. What I'm trying to say to you, Nigel, is instead of you standing in front of that poster of Syrian refugees entering Germany, not United Kingdom, you could have explained to the British public the implications of having an Irish border, for instance, or breakup of European or United Kingdom, or for instance, the biggest contributor to the treasury in this country is the financial sector. What would happen if our financial sector were to lose EU trading passports? You could have explained this to the British people.
But would you know something, Peter? Having spent 20 years working in that industry, let me tell you, the reason London's a success isn't because it's a European trading centre, it's because it's a global trading centre. But, you know, Peter, you're trying to rerun the arguments of the referendum, and we're going to get nowhere with that, because I haven't changed my mind on any of those things. What I want to ask you is, do you think it's the correct exercise of sovereignty for Parliament to want to have the final say on whatever deal Theresa May does?
Well, as far as I remember, Nigel, and you probably know better than me because the career politician you are, we live in a parliamentary...
No, thank you. I'm not having that.
Well,
you can call me anything you like, but not that.
Well, how many years you spent in European Parliament? You tried to be elected to be a member of Parliament in the United Kingdom. You failed, and now...
Well, I stood repeatedly for Parliament as a duty. That's what we did in UKIP to try and forward the argument.
Well, coming back to my point is, we live in a parliamentary democracy, and the job of parliamentarian is not to be our bosses or our servants, but to do what's best for the country. And they have the right to hold our government to account to what they're doing.
Yep.
And the final deal with the with the European Union is critical for the well-being of the whole people of this country. And if should we get a bad deal or no deal, MPs should have a right to protect those countries from jumping off the cliff. There is no good us aligning our standards to some countries based in Africa, Commonwealth, or somewhere else. All our standards and everything else is intertwined with European standards. And you should be explaining to the British public how long it's going to take for us to change our standards or interline with the other countries. How long does it take for us to accept standards of other countries?
No, Peter, I don't believe I don't believe in harmonisation, homogenisation, even pasteurisation of all our laws and all our systems with other countries. I believe in competition. I believe in free markets. It's something, when I used to vote Conservative, the Conservative Party used to believe in. They used to believe in competition. Now they believe, apparently, in regulatory alignment. Peter, you've had your say. I understand the way you feel. You feel it very strongly. In fact, people on both sides tonight of this argument feel very, very strongly indeed. Are you not aware of the nature of MPs and how they are required to exercise their judgment to represent us? Yes, they are. They are lent that authority at each election. And they do make decisions for us as a representative democracy. The point about this referendum is that for once, that decision was subcontracted back to us, and I think they have a duty to respect it. And I feel what they've done tonight actually damages that. I wonder what Keith in Stoke Newington thinks. Good evening, Keith.
Nigel, yes, good evening. I think we should do what Oliver Cromwell did and arrest all those 309 MPs, throw them away, simply on the grounds that they have taken away the power from the people to themselves. It's now become a dictatorship. And that's a violation of the Coronation Oath and Parliament's prime directive to protect the people's will. So constitutionally, this vote has to be set aside regardless. And I think it's a question of law, and that question should go to the courts to decide. And the other point I want to make is that when we were trading, the East India Company, English East India Company was trading with the Dutch East India Company, all the other East Indias, the French, the Spanish, and the Portuguese, they made a trading pact in 1650, similar to the common market. We agreed, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. And what happens? All the other East India trading companies walked over us. They destroyed us, and it ended up in war. And the reason is because the other European powers knew that we beat them on international trade completely, and they're terrified of us. And ever since, they've wanted to control us and stop us, which is exactly what the EU is about. It's exactly what idiots are doing. I'm getting so angry about this. It's terrible.
Keith, I've had fuming. I've had fuming tonight. I've had beyond fuming. Describe your current mood.
I'm fuming. I'm totally angry. I want to go down and arrest all these. I call them possible. I don't want to use the word, but crooks crossing my mind. But if they're traitors, I think they're possible traitors.
Strong stuff. Thank you. My last caller tonight. I've only got 40 seconds for you. Adam in Canterbury. Good evening.
Okay. Hi. Good evening. Could I just ask, are you in Brussels at the moment to pass vote on the stage one of negotiations in the Brexit deal?
I'm in Strasbourg at the moment, where the European Parliament has been voting. But you're down to 30 seconds, Adam. Tell me what you think.
Do you get a vote on the final Brexit deal as an MEP?
Oh yes. MEPs could, at the end of this whole process, veto the whole thing, because that's what's in the treaty.
So therefore, why do you think it's not suitable for a British Member of Parliament to have a vote on the final deal?
Because the British members of Parliament were given an instruction from the electorate in a referendum. They clearly don't respect that. Adam, I understand the argument that they are MPs, that we normally live in a representative democracy, but I think this is a different circumstance. I'm sorry, we have run out of time. Adam raises a huge point about the power that MEPs ultimately have over all of this, and he's right to do so, and I was going to talk about it tonight, but hey, that dramatic vote in the Commons has really overruled all of it. Folks, what is going on here is our political class are doing their absolute best to stop, delay, water down, reverse Brexit in any way they can. And what evidence do I have for that? Well, after that division, and when it was clear how the vote was going to go, this was the noise we heard in the House of Commons tonight. And I think that noise, frankly, says it all. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'll be back tomorrow night from 7 o'clock. Coming up at 10 tonight, it's Ian Collins. But up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you.